This video is for anyone interested in learning about traditional book publishing, that whole process. There might be other videos out there like this, I don't know, but since I'm headed into my 4th published book and I get a lot of questions about how this process works, I thought it'd be fun to share the general process and maybe a few unique things about my current book contract. So just last week, I turned in my 2nd round of edits for a book that will release in a full year. So in this video, I'm going to share about the process from the time an author signs a contract with a publishing house until the book comes out or is released into the world. I'm starting there just because that's the stage I'm currently in, but I will plan to come back and do another video where I go backwards in time and I start from the book idea. Just when you have that book idea, how you go from there to getting to sign a contract with a publisher. So be sure that you have subscribed to my YouTube channel and come back and I'll share that real soon. But first, before I dive in, I'm Monica Swanson, author, podcast host, and Hawaii-based mom to 4 boys. And last December, my husband Dave and I signed a contract with Harvest House Publisher to write 3 books, actually. It's a 3-book deal. My husband is co-authoring 2 of them with me. It's the first time we've done that, and I'm really excited about it. But in this video, I'm just going to talk more about the general experience of the publishing process, not so much about co-authoring with my husband, which is its own topic. It's been really fun and also really hard. So if you're interested in that, maybe I'll share more about that later as well. So first of all, I want to say how grateful I am to be working with Harvest House. They're a dream publisher for me. I have so much respect for them. And again, 3-book deal is a dream. I get to write about 3 topics that I'm passionate about. And also 3-book deal is job security. So that's really fun. So here's a little bit about how this whole process goes. Now, first of all, people ask, how do you get paid to write a book? How does that part work? Well, when you first sign your contract, there's a few important things in it. There's a whole lot in it, but importantly is they offer you an advance. And an advance is the amount of money that they are agreeing to pay you upfront to write the book. And that's going to vary author to author depending on how big of a following you have, how many books they imagine will sell, right? So you have this advance, and typically they will pay you either 1/2 or maybe 1/3 of that right away upfront once you sign the contract. And then the other part will be given to you when you turn in the completed manuscript. And if there's a third, then it would be when the book releases into the world. Now, at that point, the publisher really owns the book. And you're only going to get paid further if you make royalties. And royalties are what happen if the book sells beyond the amount projected by what they've paid you in the advance. Does that make sense? Now, a lot of authors never do see a royalty, and that's okay. You don't really go into it expecting that. But of course, if you sell a lot of copies, then you will make royalties. And for my nosy followers out there, I do make royalties from my book, Boy Mom. But so far, I have not hit the sales needed to get royalties on Raising Amazing or Becoming Homeschoolers. I'm still hoping to get there. That would be great. You can help by buying copies of those books. But regardless, that's how you get paid for writing a book. Now, that's not the main point of this. So if you have questions about the money stuff, just leave me a comment and we'll see if we can cover more of that later. But also in the contract, there's a few more things. They're going to give you a date that your first rough draft manuscript needs to be turned in. They're also going to tell you how many words they expect to be in that book, basically how long the book should be. And then there's a whole lot of other fine print, legal jargon, stuff that I mostly trust my book agent to understand, things that don't really affect my book writing process. Now, from my experience, you are typically given anywhere from 4 to 8 months to write your book once you've signed that contract. And then once you've turned in that rough draft, there's about a year before the book releases. So that's a typical timeline. So I signed this last contract, Dave and I together signed it just before Christmas last winter, 2025. And at first, the first draft was due April 1st, with the release plan for about a year later. Well, I had a really busy season coming up that spring, so I asked if I could have until May 1st. They said yes, and that was the plan. Now, that busy season, some of you know, if you follow me, you know my son was getting married, so that was going to be busy. But even more, I spent a lot of time with my parents as my dad was battling end-stage cancer, and then he passed away April 21st, which was less than 2 weeks before the manuscript was due. Now, I was also juggling regular life. I have a teenager still doing school at home, and I travel with him a lot for golf. And then I had all that time with my parents, and then the grief of losing my amazing dad. But I really wanted to hit that deadline. And so in the end, Dave and I did get our manuscript done by May 1st, which happened to be the day of my dad's memorial service. Now, no doubt that manuscript was not nearly as polished as I would have liked for it to be. I was pretty bummed that I just felt like I didn't get to finish it all the way, though it was turned in. I didn't feel great about that. But fortunately, I have a wonderful editor and publishing house, and we talked about things and agreed that we could take a little longer in the editing process, and we'd push out the release date of the book to the end of summer rather than next spring. So that gave us a little bit more time. Now, this is a big book. It's longer than any book I've written. It's a family devotional, and Dave and I really care about this, and we really want to get it right. So we were grateful that our editor could have a full month with it after we turned it in May, and then we had a full month after that to work on the first round of edits. That's more time than most people get, so I felt really grateful for that. And when you get that first round of edits, if you ever go through this, just be prepared. It can be really overwhelming. There's a lot of red ink. There's things you see just deleted, things added. There's questions in the sidebar, things like, what does this mean? Add an example here. We need a citation. Sometimes they'll ask you to come up with a better story, to delete an entire paragraph, or to rewrite entire chapters. Now, if you're sensitive, this stuff could crush you. You've got to be tough. Thankfully, this wasn't my first rodeo. So when that first round of edits came back, I was prepared. And kind of funny, I took screenshots of a couple of my editor's notes, which we joked about later, and she confessed that she had written a couple notes for herself that she just forgot to delete when I got them back. And one of the screenshots I took a photo of, it said something like, "This paragraph is weird and doesn't make sense. Otherwise, it's fine." I can take it. She was right. It was a terrible paragraph, but that was something we definitely laughed about later. So to finish this story, Dave and I together had a full month. We worked hard on our edits, and then we turned it back in to the editor, who had another go at it. And then about 2 weeks later, we got it back for our second round of edits. Now, the second round of edits is typically your last chance to make content changes. You're improving your writing, anything you want to really edit or change about the manuscript. This is your chance. And that's the step we just turned in, which is a huge relief. Now, at this point, the editor went over it one more time, but pretty quickly passed it on to the copy editor. And the copy editor is in charge of all the details, the grammar, punctuation, catching parts that don't flow or are unusually short or long. And this is such an important step because this makes a book publish worthy. I mean, I love to write, and I can write blog posts and Instagram captions, but a book needs to be polished and stylish and professional. And so the copy editor has it right now, and probably in a couple weeks, we will get it back again. Now, my preference at this stage, I love it when they can send you in the mail a printed copy of your manuscript. I like to see it in writing, especially after looking at it for so many months online. I have had that option with one or two of my books, but oftentimes now everything is done online, so we'll see what happens. But either way, this is the step where Dave and I will read over everything again and again and again. And honestly, by the time you're done with this step, you typically, or at least from my experience, I typically don't like my book anymore. I've read it so much, it puts me to sleep. I convince myself no one's going to enjoy it. I want to curl up in a fetal position and question my very existence. And honestly, the first time this happened, I was sad. I was worried. I legit lost sleep over it. But then I talked to other authors who told me, no, this is very normal. Don't freak out. And so I have learned to kind of go with the flow and accept that that's just kind of how you feel. But at this point, you send the manuscript back to the copy editor. And then, can you guess? Yep, you get it back one more time. I'm not sure about everyone else, but I typically have had 4 rounds of edits. So by this 4th round, you really don't like the book, but you're so far in, you can't pull out now. And so you have to just do your job, go over it again, just look for any little details that could be missing or wrong or any mistakes, and then you give it your stamp of approval and you turn it in. Now, I'll also say that during this entire time, there's other communication going on between myself and the publishing house. There's a whole team there that you're communicating with. Before I turned in that very first manuscript, we'd already designed the cover of the book. Can you believe that? I wish I could show it to you. I can't yet, but I'm really excited for how that turned out. Also, while I was writing that first draft, I was asked to record a video that the publisher could share at book conferences so that they could show like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and different booksellers what was coming out in the next year. At some point, I also start to get emails from the marketing team who are putting together the press kits or the copy for the back cover, what you're going to read on the Amazon write-up about your book. So that's all happening throughout this process. And then during those months between that final edited manuscript being turned in and the book release, there's probably 4 to 6 months. And that's when you get busy meeting with the marketing team. They want a list of every author you have a good relationship with who might offer an endorsement for the inside of the book. They want to know which podcasters you might know or who you would be interested in being able to be on their podcast to begin scheduling interviews to talk about the book. They want to talk about pre-order bonuses if you want a launch team and anything that I can plan to do on my end to help promote the book. It's a lot. It can be overwhelming, but from my experience, this is a really fun part of the process. Of course, for me with this current book, I will already be working on my second book by then and going through the edits and all that. So it's going to be a lot, but I still do enjoy that part of the process. So you might have heard people talk about the pros and cons of traditional publishing, which I just talked about, and self-publishing. And some people definitely prefer self-publishing because they get to keep more of the money. They can get books into the world faster. There's definitely some advantages to that. But honestly, from my experience working with 3 different publishers, I love teaming up with publishers. I think they offer so much in the way of editing, support, marketing, publicity, book covers, all those things. It is really worth it. And like I said, what I shared today was just the steps going from when you sign a book contract to getting it out into the world. But some of you want to know, how do you get to that point of signing a contract? Well, that's what I'll share in the next video. I'm going to share from my experience that process of just having a book idea. Whoever you are, however much writing you've done, if you've got a book idea, how you go from there to getting a contract with a real publishing house. And if that's interesting to you, be sure to subscribe here, like this video, and come back because soon I will share part 2, which is that whole first part of the process. Also, be sure to visit me at my website, monicaswanson.com. This is not the kind of stuff I normally talk about. Typically, I talk a lot more about faith and family topics, a little bit of women's health stuff, but I thought this would be a fun thing to share, especially as I'm just getting my feet wet again in this YouTube world. So thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Feel free to leave me a comment below, and I'll see you again soon. Aloha.